The fact that our world is now larger than it ever was also means we have to be a little more cognizant about keeping ourselves, our data, and our computer systems safe. Most of us are aware that content from the internet can be potentially harmful, and hopefully we've also installed and kept updated virus and spam software to help with these particular issues. But still, there are times when we access data that we're just not quite familiar with. Maybe somebody sends us a link in an email message and we click on it and it opens a document. Or maybe the document itself is an attachment from somebody we know, but still it's come over the internet. What I'd like to do is go ahead and explore some of the new features that will keep us safe with Office 2010. And I'm going to do that by opening a file. I'll simply go to the File tab, open up our Backstage, go to my Open option, and I'm going to take a look at a file called Potentially Dangerous Document. Now, I actually get a little bit of a hint right when I look at this because my normal Word icon has a little exclamation mark on it. This actually isn't anything that is totally bad. It just means that it's macro enabled or it has active content in it. But actually, that's exactly what we want. So let me go ahead and double click and open this up. What we get to see that's new in 2010 is this warning bar at the top. Now, I know that some of you may say, no, I've seen that before, but it behaves a little bit differently. In the past few versions, we have been able to see warnings like this for things like macros and active content, but not necessarily for things from the internet. This is now called Protected View, and by default, the feature will be invoked whenever files from the internet or from an email attachment are opened. It will also display, like for this document, when a file contains active content. Active content would include anything like macros, ActiveX controls, or even data connections, like if you have a mail merge document that's connected to an Access database. When this occurs, you can either click Enable Editing, or you can go into your Backstage and look for more information. You'll notice that right now it says Enable Content. If I don't click this and I try to work in the document, I'm not going to be able to do very much because it says I'm not making this available to you until you tell me that you think it's safe. In this case, I do, so I'll click the button. The bar goes away, and the document is now unlocked just like I would expect it. Now I can go ahead and modify, so I'll say potentially but not dangerous document. I know that some people find all of these security measures a little bit irritating, and at some point I do agree with you, and that's why we have trusted sources, trusted locations, and trusted documents. But these are the defaults. If you want to change your defaults, remember that you can always go in and you can change them in your Word options by going to the Trust Center, which is where the macros, the ActiveX controls, the trusted locations, all of those other things are set up. So it will work the way that you want, but by default it's going to come on anytime you have an internet accessed document or something that has active content or that came from an email attachment itself. Alrighty then, we know why a document might open in protected mode, even if it's from your own desktop or one of those places where you would assume that things would be safe. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and close this document. And then I can show you one more feature and I went ahead and closed that document without saving it. Now I'm in trouble, right? Well, I don't think so. Let me go ahead and launch Word again. And let me go back to my beautiful Backstage view, which I love. And I'm going to take a look at my recent documents. Notice what I can see here. Even though I didn't save it, it says Potentially Dangerous Document. When it says one that I closed without saving. This is a wonderful new feature. It's kind of like the fallback to the fallback. For forever, they've always asked us, do you want to save this, yes or no? And for, basically the last 20 years or so, if we say no, they figure, okay, we asked you once, and if you said no, we're not going to save it. Now, even though we say no, we can still get it back. If by some chance you don't see this option, it may be because your document was closed before Auto Recover had a chance to make its little auto-saved version. There could be some other reasons as well. One thing to look at, though, is to see if you have another folder called Recover Unsaved Documents, which you'll see at the bottom of the menu. But remember that Auto Recover is an important feature when it comes to using this particular tool. I also want you to remember that you have to have that set, it has to be enabled, and you can also adjust how frequently those little mini versions are saved. All of that would be found in your Application Options menu, which can be found from the File tab. But also remember that this is not something you should rely on. Just like you shouldn't keep things that you know you want to recover in the recycle bin, you shouldn't count on this to get your stuff back. It's a second chance option, but it is not a save feature. Let me go ahead and give this a click. There we go. It comes up as an auto-saved version. It says this is not the last saved version, and I can compare it or I can restore it. Wow. So if they don't think that I can handle things, maybe sometimes they're right, because sometimes my finger just starts to come off of that button and I go, oh no, what did I just do? A couple of little caveats here though. You obviously do have to have your auto-save versions enabled. So go into your settings and set that up for however many minutes you want. Usually 5 or 10 is good, because it does revert back to the auto-saved version. Obviously, that means that you would have had to have the document open at least that amount of time for there to be a version for it to open up to. If we don't want to compare and we don't want to restore it to the version, but we want to stay with this one, we can go ahead and close this. We can see that up above it, we also have our security warning, so we'll say enable the content there. And I just wanted to show you that if you go into your Backstage view and into your information, you also can get back to your versions by using the versions here. This is going to give you a lot more information. This file has been opened in read-only mode because this version was automatically saved, and it's going to save it for just a few days. They're not specific, but for just a few days, and then it will automatically go away. So this makes the auto-saved versions that we've had for a while a little bit easier to work with. I know a lot of people knew that they had auto-save versions but couldn't figure out how the heck to open them up. So this is our solution. While I don't recommend that you close things on purpose without saving them, if you do, and about the time your finger comes off that button, you actually realize that you can breathe because you have a second option. Let me go ahead and get out of the Backstage view. And just remind everybody that it might seem like at first glance there aren't that many new features in Word 2010. But when we take a little bit of a closer look, or maybe more importantly because we don't always take a closer look, we find that there are lots of things working on our behalf. Using things like the navigation pane to find content and rearrange it is a huge time saver. Adding in text features to make our documents, kind of pop off the page and more easily communicate our intended message is great. And then behind the scenes, we have protection recovery features of Word that are going to keep us smiling too, even if we don't always appreciate that it's working on our behalf. So there you have it, some of the new obvious and not so obvious features in Word 2010.